King Henry Christophe was a leader in the Haitian Revolution of 1804, helping to establish Haiti as the first independent black republic. But his story goes beyond the battlefield. Rising from slavery to kingship, he shaped the nation's early history while facing resistance from foreign powers. This week on the Lectures in History podcast, Yale University professor Marlene Daut explores Christophe's life, his role in the revolution, and how the world reacted to Haiti's fight for independence. More after this.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with MyLowe's Rewards. Earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Right, good morning. Thank you everyone for our last class session of Haiti in the Age of Revolutions. So we're going to be talking today, we're going to be rounding out sort of what we learned all semester long, discussing the Haitian Revolution, sort of revisiting some of that material, but focusing on the particular life of Henry Christophe, King of Haiti, and thinking about the relationship, as we've done all semester, between the Haitian Revolution and Haitian independence. It's very important to try to understand the pivotal moment in world historical significance of the Haitian Revolution in relationship to Haitian independence and to what happened in the post-emancipation period, how sovereignty unfolded, and how Haiti's first leaders really tried to establish black sovereignty in a hostile world of slavery. So that's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to start with King Henry Christophe's coronation on June 2nd, 1811. And then we're going to kind of fold back and think about, well, how did he get to this point? He himself was a formerly enslaved person. How could it come to pass that he would end up becoming the King of Haiti, as this is obviously a remarkable trajectory for a remarkable life for someone who fought during the Haitian Revolution, and ended up leading Haiti, becoming one of the principal leaders in the post-emancipation period. So we're going to start with his early life. We'll kind of zoom into him, then we'll think about his role in the revolution, and then we'll think about how it is that he ended up in this position of becoming king, and what was his vision for independent Haiti, and how did it all kind of crumble and fall apart, and what were the consequences of that? What was the aftermath of the end of his reign? So, of course, Henry Christophe, he was born actually on the British-controlled island of Grenada. At the moment of his birth, the island was in British hands. It had previously been in French hands. And remember, we've talked about in other classes, the world powers kind of traded islands in the Caribbean around like chess pieces in a way. For each of their wars, the 7 Years' War, et cetera, a new power would come to reign over those islands that were colonies of places like Great Britain and France. And the reason that I have up here a lot of text on the screen is I think it's really important when you're dealing with someone who was a previously enslaved individual to point out how you know things about their life. So, for example, if you were to Google Henry Christophe or Google King of Haiti, you might see just in web search results that oh, Christophe is from the island of St. Kitts. He's from the island of St. Christopher. He grew up on St. Thomas. And so I think it's important to say how we know that he was born on the island of Grenada. And so the first text you're looking at comes from an author whom you're all very familiar with, Baron de Vaté, but not the text that you read. You read his 1814, The Colonial System Unveiled. But this passage is actually from his 1819 history of the causes of the revolution and civil wars of Haiti, of course, originally written in French and published in the kingdom in 1819, but it actually did see an English translation in Christophe's era in 1823. And so Vathey, who is Christophe's most important minister, he's his secretary, he ends up running the newspaper press as well. He tells us Henri is originally from the island of Grenada. He also tells us he is 51 years old, which reinforces something else that could have been occluded if we did not have these sources from the kingdom. It also reinforces the birth date that we have for Henry Christophe, which is October 6, 1767. And if you think about, for example, an enslaved person usually doesn't have their birth date recorded in such a precise manner because their history is usually not told. But because Christophe became king of Haiti and controlled his own press, had writers writing on his behalf, he could have his story recorded and told. And so also in the almanacs that they published every single year in independent Haiti that told who was in the administration, who was a noble, who was in the aristocracy, who was in the military, it also described the royal family of Haiti. And so we get, naturally, the king comes first. His Majesty Henri, King of Haiti, was born on October 6, 1767. He was crowned, and it says, on June 2nd, 1811. And so we get these really precise details exactly because Christophe controls his own press. He has writers able to record his story. And so his life takes on remarkable significance in that sense as well. He understood the importance of having someone record these details and tell his life story. And so I've just zoomed in there on the third little image. But in Vathey's work, we also get confirmation of some other very important information, which is that before arriving on the island of Saint-Domingue, which is today Haiti, Christophe participated in the American Revolutionary War at the Battle of Savannah, which took place on October 9th, 1779. So when he first arrives in Georgia, he's 11 years old, but at the time of the battle, he's just celebrated his 12th birthday, which is on the battlefield where he is most likely wounded. Because in Vathey's essay on the causes of the revolutions and civil wars of Haiti, he tells us the king served in the war of the United States of America, and he was wounded at the Battle of Savannah. So again, that information, which must have seemed so obvious to Vathey, that you'll notice here he puts it in a footnote. He's telling a different story. So it must have been common knowledge around, and he just wanted to make sure that he noted that before Christophe fought in the Haitian Revolution, he fought for American independence from Great Britain. There is actually a wonderful monument to what are called the chasseurs volontaires, who are the free men of color who fought in the American Revolution at the Battle of Savannah. What you're looking at here is a close-up of a monument to the chasseurs volontaires that sits in a very shady square, a beautiful square in Savannah, Georgia, called Franklin Square, and it was put up by the Haitian American Historical Society. They wanted to commemorate the many free men of color from Saint-Domingue, Haitian soldiers who contributed to Haitian independence. And so on the base of the monument, which you are looking at here, they list the names. And some of these names will sound familiar to you because you've encountered them elsewhere in our lectures, like Vincent Auger, Jean-Baptiste Chavannes, and of course, Toussaint Louverture's storied rival, André Rigaud, that Henri Christophe is also listed on this monument. So it's this history that is known and simultaneously not known. Most people probably haven't heard of Henri Christophe, and they probably therefore don't know that Haitian soldiers fought in the American Revolution at the Battle of Savannah. I should also point out that this is a battle that the French and the American patriots lose. It causes a lot of devastation to the Patriot Army and to the French, who are forced to flee. But at the same time, when those fighters from the Savannah days returned to Saint-Domingue, they brought knowledge of revolution and warfare with them that we think aided them in the idea of conceiving of a revolution, not just to end slavery, because many of them were from families that enslaved others, but that they could one day get independence from France. So the seed is planted. If it didn't already exist in their mind, they had an example of how it could unfold. And of course, the American Revolution ends in victory from Great Britain. So by the time that they've returned, only just a couple years later, they can really see it is actually possible to beat a huge imperial power and win independence. Like so many of those chasseurs volontaires, some of the others were from Martinique and Guadeloupe, but like so many from Saint-Domingue, Christophe ends up on that island. How he ends up on Saint-Domingue? Most likely with the fleets and squadrons who were returning. Some of them got pushed farther out to sea. They were supposed to go to other destinations in the Caribbean, but their bad weather, it's hurricane season, pushes them farther out to sea. And at least 3 to 4 of those ships that disembark from Savannah end up in Saint-Domingue. So that's what we think happened in Christophe's case. In any case, this is not necessarily a fortunate place for him to land. Well, for one thing, we don't know if at the time that he fought or participated in the Battle of Savannah, we think as a drummer boy, we don't know if he already had free status at that moment or if he was still enslaved. Now, I mentioned that the chasseurs volontaires were supposed to be free men of color, but the documents that set up this corps described how an enslaved person could fight or join in their enslaver's stead. So that way, if their enslaver was a free person of color who was conscripted into the army and supposed to fight, they could say, I'm going to send this person instead. At the end of that service, that enslaved person is supposed to get liberty. But we have to think about Christophe being 12 years old, ending up back on the island of Saint-Domingue, which already has the reputation of being the cruelest slave colony in the Atlantic world. And we call it a slave colony because at this point, in the late 18th century, the only reason that people live on this island and move there and go there is for the purposes of slavery, because Saint-Domingue is the richest sugar colony in the entire Americas. And you think about it, this is the western third of the island of Hispaniola. Remember, today, Haiti shares the island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic, which is on the eastern 2/3, right? So we think about Saint-Domingue and its relative size, but look at the numbers, if you can see them there on the screen. Look at the numbers. Saint-Domingue, the French alone, from 1697 to 1791, when the revolution breaks out, they forcibly transport 900,000 captive Africans to toil there as their slaves. 900,000. With the rest of the world powers combined, that number reaches more than 1.3 million. 1.3 million people there to cultivate these lands forcibly to produce sugar, coffee, indigo, cacao, cotton, for the purposes of enriching the imperial powers, and namely France. Spain is a huge player in this market as well, the Netherlands, Portugal, and so we can see those numbers reflected for the rest of the French Caribbean islands, but look at the difference in terms of the amount in the same time period of enslaved Africans who are forcibly transported to these islands. Baron de Vatte, again, in the text you've read, The Colonial System Unveiled, he told us about the devastating effect of this slave system, the colonial system. He said it was horribly cruel. He talked about all of the crimes against humanity that enslavers committed. And he used that word because, remember, the Haitian revolutionaries are the first to say that slavery and the slave trade were crimes against humanity in 1807. And here in 1814, this seems obvious to Vathey as he describes this terrible traffic in human beings, he says, which is a euphemism, the traffic that could never fully capture the horrors of this system. And he says the individual planters, he makes sure that we know that it's not just a system, it's made up of individual people. And he describes the cases of more than 100 enslavers who had tortured the people they enslaved and the horrible things that happened to them. It would be one thing, perhaps, as in Vathey's era, if Vathey were the only one to testify to this, right? So in his era, many French colonists, ex-French colonists, and those who continued on in the other colonies of France said, oh, this is just an exaggeration. Can we really trust this account? It's propaganda. But remember, we actually don't need Vathey alone to tell us about the horrors of slavery on Saint-Domingue. The French naturalist, René Michel Hilard de Berthoy, he was sent by the French crown to the colony. Imagine this, to think about how the colony could become more profitable. That's his job as a naturalist. So remember, the French king sends priests and sends naturalists and sends all kinds of people there who are supposed to study and chronicle what's going on. They're supposed to describe the flora and fauna, they're supposed to describe the earth, the rocks, but they're also describing the people. And one of the things that Hilard de Berthoy does is he says there's a high death rate in this colony. That's why we keep having to forcibly transport more and more captive Africans to work the land. He says it plainly. The majority of the Negroes from Guinea ordinarily die after the first 3 years of being transported, and the laborious life of a Negro born in the country does not usually surpass 15 years. He confirms the numbers that we get from the slave trade database today. He says, since 1680, we have introduced more than 800,000 Negroes into the colony. Nevertheless, at this time, there exist only 290,000. This is due to a combination of the cruelty of the French colonists and diseases like anthrax and tetanus that the colonists, even though they had physicians, they actually did know how to treat such maladies, such as anthrax poisoning. They often would not provide care to the enslaved, the people they were enslaving. And remember when we read Carol Weaver's book, Medical Revolutionaries? This is why enslaved women who acted as nurses and acted as healers were so important in this time period, because they actually could provide care. But when you're dealing with diseases like yellow fever and tetanus, it's very, very difficult without certain forms of knowledge to be able to treat individuals effectively. And so we get this extremely high death rate. In that light, is it any wonder that Saint-Domingue, as the cruelest slave colony in the Americas, becomes the site of the largest revolt and rebellion of enslaved people in the entire region? So recall that in the middle of August, 1791, representatives, usually drivers, people who were considered to be important on the various plantations where they were forced to labor, the drivers and enslaved representatives come together in the northern plain, in a spot called Mont Rouge. This is often referred to as the Bois Caïman ceremony. And they come together and they discuss, how can we turn our everyday rebellion, which also existed in the colony, into organized resistance, to an organized freedom struggle? How can we make sure that it's not just individual people who are able to free themselves through marronage, for example, fugitivity, running away? How can we make sure that we get more people free? Is it possible to end slavery entirely here? And they conceive of a plan led by a man named Boukman Duddy and a woman named Cécile Fatiman, and they say, the God of the white man calls him to commit crimes, but our God wants good works from us. So let's band together and let's achieve freedom. And it's less than 10 days after this ceremony, the northern plain is set ablaze by enslaved freedom fighters who start burning down the cane fields, burning down the plantations, and they really grind the slave system, the slave economy, to a halt. One issue that the enslaved freedom fighters will have that's not on their side is that France is possessed of an enormously powerful organ, which is the printing press. Right? So as news travels across the Atlantic, through the seas, back to France, France can start ramping up its propaganda machine in which they describe the enslaved freedom fighters, right, as insurrectionists and rebels and brigands and terrorists instead of freedom fighters. They say they want to massacre all the whites. They print articles like the one you're looking at here, 200 plantations on fire, 300 whites massacred. They don't discuss, for example, what Vathey would reveal in 1814, the massive amount of death and destruction that enslaved people suffered at the hands of their enslavers or other colonial officials, should they decide to, for example, run away and get caught, for which the punishment was often death. They don't discuss even what Hilaire de Bertoy wrote in 1776. They discuss only what they conceive of as the desire for the enslaved freedom fighters to quote-unquote kill their masters, when of course the goal was actually freedom from slavery and later independence from France. They didn't just have the newspaper press. They also used literary texts and engravings like this one that appeared at the front of a popular text. It's one of the most well-known images, repurposed and repackaged in different ways, in different texts for decades. This is one of the most well-known images of the revolution to be published in France. And you can see, if you look closely, all of the women and children who are fleeing the destruction. You see a black man in the foreground with a saber. And so the idea that this image is trying to reinforce is, once again, that the enslaved freedom fighters are the aggressors, that this is not a defensive rebellion, but an aggressive rebellion. And so this is why it became so important for writers like Baron de Vathey later to come in and say, I'm going to correct the record, because I know that France and European enslavers are possessed of printing presses in which, what does he say? They have published thousands of pages freely against us. Now that we have our own Haitian printing press, we can issue a retort. Well, although they didn't have a printing press, they do eventually have Toussaint Louverture. We've read a lot about him this semester and how he was also a master at using that same press. He gained access to the printing presses, he gained access to writing, and he decided that he would also attempt to shape the narrative. So after the ceremony at Bois Caïman, the revolution begins. Remember, the French colonists put a bounty on Boukman's head, the leader and sort of organizer of those initial days. They put a bounty on his head, and a Monsieur Michel brings his head to the colonists. And now at this moment, we have several other leaders who are going to fill the sort of gap left behind by his death. We have Biassou, Jean-François, Toussaint Louverture, and actually a host of others. Remember Leclerc's resonant phrase when he succeeds in arresting later Toussaint Louverture? He says, yes, I arrested him, but we have 10,000 Louvertures to deal with. So even in this time period where Toussaint Louverture rises to be the face and most well-known of the revolutionaries, remember all throughout there are 10,000 Louvertures. And that really is punctuated by the fact that getting rid of Boukman, for example, well, you can bring his head to the colonists. You can use these terror tactics, because that's really what it was, right? You bring the person's head to the public and you say, this is what will happen to you. But there were 10,000 more always to take whomever's place. Toussaint Louverture achieves some great victories with those 10,000s, which are really tens of thousands of Louvertures. So the French are beside themselves in trying to decide what they should do to quell the rebellion. They've sent militias. They've asked for reinforcements, and now they're going to send three main commissioners. They've sent some other commissioners. They fail. They're unable to stop the progress of the revolution. The two main commissioners who stay in their posts are a man named Santonax and another named Polverel. When they initially come to the island, they say, oh, we're not here to help end slavery. We're not going to do anything about it. Slavery has to continue here. What we're here to do is to try to recruit the free people of color, the free men of color, many of whom were also enslavers, had plantations, to be on the side of France. Because previous to that, the free men of color, they're not so sure that they want to stay on the side of France, since the French government and the French colonists in particular are not really interested in viewing them as equals, because of their skin colors, because of the idea that they're of African descent. So these commissioners are supposed to come there to tampen things down, to make sure that the colony can function as a slave colony and a sugar colony once more. But when they get there, they realize the difficulty ahead of them. They realize these are not just brigands setting fire, as the French would say. This is an organized rebellion with leaders who you will have to negotiate with them. And Toussaint Louverture says, we will not put down arms unless you end slavery. And at first, they say no. So he's joined with Spain. Spain and England have both invaded the colony. Again, one of those contests for power. Toussaint Louverture, Biassou, plenty of the others, they join with Spain. The commissioners see that they have little choice. And so they declare the end of slavery first in the Northern Plain, in the Western Plain, and the Southern Plain follows. This causes Toussaint Louverture to say, okay, I will come back into the fold of France and I will fight as a French soldier against the British and the Spanish. When the news that Polverel and Santonax have issued this decree, which is really it's already a fait accompli in certain ways, because the enslaved have already freed themselves in a de facto manner by stopping work, by fleeing the plantations where they had been forced to toil. And so by this time, France has also recognized that if they want to hang on to the colony, they must take a drastic step. They take a step that surprises their enemies in the Atlantic world. In February of 1794, the French commissioners abolish slavery in the French National Convention abolishes slavery in all France's overseas empire. With one caveat: the island of Martinique has been lost to the British in this sort of never-ending war between France and England. And so this emancipation decree is not going to apply in Martinique, which is going to become very important when a man named Napoleon Bonaparte comes to power, decides that Toussaint Louverture, who you see here, is able to rally everyone together. He says formerly enslaved people, he says free men of color, brothers and friends, I want us to get liberty and equality. We're gonna come together and we're gonna make it happen, and I'm gonna work for that for you. Napoleon Bonaparte, however, is overthrowing a new French revolutionary government in 1799. It's replaced with what's called the consulate. There's 3 consuls. Napoleon Bonaparte is the first consul. And he pretty quickly realizes Toussaint Louverture is his rival, and he's going to stop Napoleon, or try to, from doing what Napoleon wants to do, which is to reinstate slavery. So if we think about that, the French National Convention, the French revolutionary government, the Jacobins, if you will, abolished slavery in 1794. When Napoleon comes to power in 1799, one of the first things he talks about, he says, you know, if I had fought in the Battle of Martinique, I would have been on the British side, because they never had the folly to abolish slavery. That's his logic, right? And so pretty quickly he realizes he has a main obstacle. He thinks maybe it's just one Louverture, but he sees Louverture as one of these main obstacles and decides he's got to get rid of him. In the process, he is already busy reinstating and reinforcing slavery. So after the Treaty of Amiens, which takes place formally in March 1802, Bonaparte goes to work pretty quickly to reinforce slavery in Martinique, where it had never been abolished. So remember, at this time, at the Treaty of Amiens, the British returned Martinique and other colonies that they had lost, that France had lost. They returned those colonies back to France, but Martinique is the big one. So now Bonaparte has an issue. He can either say slavery is abolished in Martinique as well. Remember, the French Republic is supposed to be one and indivisible. Or he can say, he can create an exception and say that slavery can exist in Martinique and the other colonies return to France. And so that's what he does by the law of May 1802. So this is what you're looking at here. You're looking at the two documents. And in fact, just to give you a sense of how momentous and historic this is, that these documents had never been publicly displayed in France in an exhibit until the 2021 bicentennial commemoration of Napoleon Bonaparte's death. He died in May 1821, and at this huge exhibit, protesters, this wasn't supposed to be part of the exhibit. They said, if you're going to tell Napoleon's story, you have to tell the whole story. And so we see here the law permitting slavery in colonies returned to France per the Treaty of Amiens, that's the May 1802 law, and the consular document. He doesn't wait long, re-establishing slavery in Guadeloupe and other French overseas territories from July 1802. So the fear that the Haitian revolutionaries had that the French would try to reinstate slavery came to fruition, except for in Saint-Domingue. And this is where Henry Christophe comes back into our frame. So just like Toussaint Louverture, who rises during this period of, if we want to call it that, reconciliation between the formerly enslaved freedom fighters in France, so 1794 to 1802, Christophe enjoys a rise in the French military as well. He becomes a brigadier general, just like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Haiti's first founder and former emperor, a really strong ally of Toussaint Louverture's. But it's Christophe whom Louverture entrusts with an important task. Remember, Louverture had made himself governor, or had been named governor of the colony, governor general, through his 1801 constitution. He names Christophe to be commander of Cap Français, which is the colony's most important port city. It's where almost all the imports and exports are going out of. For all intents and purposes, it is the capital. In some ways, not just of the colonies, but of the Antilles in general. This is the place where people are passing through, where goods are passing through. This is a center of money. It's a fiscal center. It is extremely important to the colony. Well, Napoleon Bonaparte knows that. And so, before he even signs the official Treaty of Amiens, he has already instructed his brother-in-law, Charles-Victor Emmanuel Leclerc, a general in the French army, to go to the island of Saint-Domingue with 30,000 French soldiers, a fleet, a massive fleet, the largest fleet to ever set sail from France at that time, to go to the colony. Their job, get rid of Toussaint Louverture and his allies, Christophe, Dessalines, Louverture's nephew, Charles Belair, his other nephew, Moïse, says, you need to get rid of all of these leaders. But just like Louverture was a formidable adversary to the French, so was Henry Christophe. And so when Leclerc sends him this famous letter saying, I'm here, you need to accede to my authority, Christophe says, you're not the one who's in charge here. I have the honor of informing you that I cannot deliver these forts and posts over which I have been given command before having received an order from the Governor General Toussaint Louverture, from whom I derive my authority. He dispatches his aide-de-camp to go and tell Toussaint Louverture about this massive fleet that has arrived, but Toussaint Louverture happens to be in Santo Domingo, which is what the eastern side of the colony was called, and also the principal city. the part that's now the Dominican Republic. Because remember, per the Treaty of Bâle in 1795, the entire island came under French control. So instead of having Spain in the eastern two-thirds, as it was previous to that, now the whole island is the French colony of Saint-Domingue technically, even though they continue to refer to the other side as Santo Domingo. But he says, you know, if you realize these threats in the absence of Toussaint Louverture's authority, of him saying, his giving authorization that you can land, if you realize these threats, I will resist, as an officer general must, and you will only enter the city of Cap after having watched it be reduced to ashes. And even upon these ashes, I will fight you. Can you imagine? Leclerc is not deterred. He starts sending his troops to circumvent this, to land on other parts of the island. Christophe gets wind of this, and he is not deterred either. Yes, he sets fire to the city of Cap Français, this is a kind of an astonishing thing that he does, because this is not the first time that the city of Cap Français has been on fire. It's not even the first time that it's been on fire during the Revolution. In June 1793, the freedom fighters had set fire to the city. These black squares are all the buildings that were burnt out, completely destroyed. Henry Christophe was one of the people, as the commander over this city, and having been given a previous charge by the French government during that period of reconciliation, who rebuilt the city at a great cost. There was damage estimated into the millions. They had ongoing reconstruction. This map shows their reconstruction. It's color-coded, so you can see the red buildings here, which is, sort of contrary to what you might imagine. The red buildings are the things that never burned. So everything else is what's ongoing construction. The gray buildings, the construction hasn't even begun on those buildings yet. So it takes a massive amount of money, manpower, of goods, transported to the colony to effect this reconstruction of this very important city. And then Christophe comes along and says, if you want to take it, you're going to have to take it by force. And when you get here, it will have been reduced to ashes. And that's what he does. He evacuates this. He has the city evacuated of women and children. And he says, at my signal, you set fire. And that's exactly what they did. Well, the French respond. Leclerc responds to this, very angry. He says, even though you're claiming, he tells Toussaint Louverture in a letter, that you had nothing to do with this, that you didn't know that Christophe had this plan hatched, I'm going to declare you an outlaw. He says General Toussaint and General Christophe are declared to be outlaws. This is from February 17th, so just a little bit after the fire. And every citizen is ordered to treat them as follows: rebels of the French Republic. Now, Christophe is doing a little bit of damage control here. He's like, Toussaint Louverture told me to do it. Toussaint Louverture says, no, I did not. I gave the generals a standing order. I told them that if 1 or 2 foreign ships arrive, interestingly that he thinks of France as foreign ships, if 1 or 2 foreign ships arrive, they can allow them to land. But any more than that, they need my authorization. Now, the sticking point is, what were the generals over those various coastal ports to do if foreign powers came anyway? Well, it stands to reason that they should fight them or set fire, which we can already see is a tactic of the freedom fighters. This is their main tactic because they know that the French need goods, weapons, ammunition, and that they need to get a lot of that from the colony. Think about how much time it would take for them to send dispatches back home. Oh, we need more shoes, for example, which is something that the French soldiers were badly in need of. We need more grains, for example. The time would take too long, so they needed to get it in the colony's stores. And if the freedom fighters set fire to that, they could deprive the French army of things that they needed to be able to subsist and to fight the freedom fighters or the revolutionaries. So, with all of this, Christophe takes an astonishing position when in late April 1802, he suddenly defects to the side of France. So many historians have said, now why would he do this? Did he betray Toussaint Louverture? Well, in order to understand this, we actually have to look at the letters that were exchanged between Christophe Leclerc and Leclerc's soldiers and generals, high-ranking officers under Leclerc's command. So remember, it's late April 1802. Napoleon Bonaparte doesn't officially reinstate or reinforce slavery in Martinique until late May 1802. So there's a time gap here, a time lag, and he doesn't officially reinstate slavery on Guadeloupe and other islands in French territory until July 1802, so even later. But what transpires just before that is Leclerc tells Christophe, we have no intention of reinstating slavery here. We have come in peace. You need to put down your arms. You need to stop fighting us. He says several others have already done so. He points to, for example, a revolutionary named Jacques Maurepas, who had command over a city in the north, a different city called Port-de-Paix. He says others have come into French arms, come into French arms. And Christophe says, I need reassurance. I need reassurance that you won't bring back slavery here. And once he gets that reassurance from Leclerc, who has no problem just saying that because they're just words to him, he defects to the side of France. He rejoins the French military. He does deliver his troops, which were considerable and very devoted to him. He delivers ammunition, and he delivers the burned down city of Cap Français. Toussaint Louverture, when he gets word of this, is devastated. But Christophe starts writing to him and saying, truly, you have to believe them. They have come here with peaceful intentions. Louverture doesn't believe this for a minute, and he says, okay, that's fine. I'll put down my arms. They say, you can retain your rank as a general in the French army, but you have to be under Leclerc's authority. He's like, no, I'm just going to go home to my plantations. I'm going to cultivate the land, and I'm going to retire. Now, when France, remember that printing press, their powerful organ, when the story reaches France, and it reaches France through one of Leclerc's letters, do you think he said, I told him I wasn't going to bring back slavery? No, he didn't say that at all. He gave this story. A fawning, obsequious Christophe, who's in love with France, who says he loves white people. He's completely devoted to them. He says, Christophe told me that he'd always been a friend to white people, whose social qualities and education he appreciated more than any other man of color. This is the story that gets printed in the French newspapers, Leclerc's letter. He says that all the Europeans who had visited Saint-Domingue could attest to his principles and his conduct, but that it was urgent circumstances that caused him to burn down the city, and that he wanted to know if there was any salvation for him, if Bonaparte would forgive him. And Leclerc supposedly says, I told him that as long as he was willing to put himself at my service, his situation would be resolved. Several more short meetings took place, and Christophe finally told me that I only had to send him my orders. So this is the kind of official story that the French are telling. It's remarkable to watch in independent Haiti, however, because Christophe does not just have Vaté working on his behalf. He saved the letters and ordered them published in 1810 and then again in 1814, which is how we know that Christophe only defected to the side of France after receiving assurance, written assurance from Leclerc that the French would not reinstate slavery. However, by the time Christophe figures out that the French are duplicitous, it's too late for at least one main player in this story, Toussaint Louverture. Remember how I said he went home to his plantations? He said, I'm going to retire. I'm going to go home. I'm not going to be involved in the French military anymore. Well, the French keep saying that he's still directing things secretly, from afar, from those plantations, and that his lieutenants are still directing the revolution because Christophe, Dessalines, who is also defected to the French by this time, Maurepas, Moïse, Charles Belair, all these huge figures of the revolution, sure, they joined with France, but you know who didn't? The 10,000 Louvertures or 10,000 freedom fighters, right? So there's still open rebellions against France every single day in the colony, and they're blaming Toussaint Louverture. So Leclerc crowns his ultimate duplicity when he sends one of his main henchmen, General Brunet. He says, you need to trick Louverture into a meeting. You need to have him arrested. And in June 1802, after begging Louverture for a meeting. Louverture's sons finally convince him. They had been schooled in France. They had met the Bonapartes. They had met the Leclercs. They convince him, just go meet with him, see what he wants. And so Louverture sadly goes to Brunet's quarters on June 7th, 1802, where he is tricked, summarily arrested, put on board a ship. Later, his wife, those same two children who convinced him to go, his sons, his 105-year-old blind godfather, they're all put on a ship and deported to France. Toussaint Louverture is separated from all of them. Toussaint Louverture is in a jail called the Fort de Joux in France, near the Swiss border. At first, he has his domestic, a man named Mars Plaisir. He tells him to take dictation. Toussaint Louverture writes down his account. He says, I was devoted to France. I was not organizing a rebellion after I laid down my arms. He tries to defend himself, but the French don't believe him. And his jailers are extremely cruel. They deprive him of water, of food, of medical care. They write all this down. We get this from the jailer's testimony. They say he was complaining of fevers and stomach aches and that he's cold because his cell, think about this, it was near the Swiss border, is frequently freezing. It's 0 degrees Celsius and below in his cell. And they deprive him of wood for burning so that he could have heat. And then they take away his clock, his timepiece. And he doesn't know, they say, if it's night or day. And on the morning of April 7th, 1803, after no guard had visited him for about a week, they come in and they find Toussaint Louverture dead. The French actually try to cover this up. It's actually astonishing when you think about how they're using the organ of the press as propaganda to tell their side of the story, that no French newspaper reports this information until April 28th, 1803. So basically 3 weeks after it happens, that's when and it's not the main French newspaper, Le Moniteur Universel. So that news pretty quickly travels across the channel over to England, where the British are more than happy, as France's most ardent enemy, to publicize this news. And they publish it in the Times, which is the paper of record in England. Toussaint Louverture is dead. He died, according to letters from Besançon in prison a few days ago. The article also goes on to talk about how the French separated him from his wife and children. They took his domestic, Mars Plaisir, and left him to die there alone. The news after this pretty quickly reaches the United States. By June 1803, the United States is also reporting this news that Toussaint Louverture has died. The French were not content to merely end the life of this major freedom fighter, this major force who was already famous in world history for leading the freedom struggle in Saint-Domingue. Under Leclerc, who writes that letter to Napoleon in August 1802, talking about the 10,000 Louvertures, his words, he says, we have to do something here. And so he creates a genocidal plan in which they hope to rid the colony of all people of color and then to repopulate the colony with more people stolen and captive from Africa. That's the plan at this point. We actually have eyewitness accounts. We have eyewitness accounts from foreigners who were in the colony at the moment, white foreigners from the United States, for example, in the first example, French generals themselves who were horrified by what they were being asked to do, and then, of course, Haitian veterans of the Revolution. So if we walk through it, we see from the literary magazine An American Register in the United States, 700 or 800 blacks. This is an eyewitness merchant from the United States. He says, and men of color were seized upon in the streets, in the public places, in their very houses, and for the moment confined within the walls of a prison. Thence they were hurried on board the national vessels lying in the harbor, from whence they were plunged into eternity. General Ramel says, the crazy thing about it was it wasn't just a war tactic because we weren't in war against some of the men. Who were the men whom we drowned in Saint-Domingue? Blacks who had been captured as prisoners on the fields of battle? No. Conspirators? Even less so. Nobody was convicted of anything because of a simple suspicion, a report, an equivocal word. 200, 400, 800, up to 1,500 blacks had been thrown into the sea. I saw this happen and I complained about it. You know who else complained about it? The Polish Legion. So we recall that Napoleon sent those Poles that he had captured this region of Poland. He sent them to Saint-Domingue to fight against the freedom fighters, to fight with Leclerc's army. And they got there, they saw all of this, and they said, no way, and defected to the side of the freedom fighters. Haitian veterans of the revolution also second and third and fourth this information that the French had adopted this terrible, terrible tactic of using genocide. But you know who else confirms this intention? Leclerc himself. In one of his most famous letters from October 7th, 1802, about a little bit less than a month before he's going to die of yellow fever in this same colony, he says, "Here is my opinion on this country. We must destroy all the blacks in the mountains, men and women, and spare only the children under 12 years of age. We must destroy half of those in the plain and must not leave a single colored person in the colony who has worn an epaulette." So again, despite this massive propaganda organ, they can't fully control the information and they can't erase the archive, or didn't think to, right? This is a letter that we can find in the published correspondence of General Leclerc, huge, massive, multi-volume works of his correspondence with Napoleon, who also has his correspondence and intentions published in 8, 9, 10, 11 volumes, even in the 19th century, so that we can go through and see exactly what they wrote, what they ordered, and what their intentions were. But the Haitian revolutionaries, the freedom fighters, even though they don't at this moment have a powerful press that they can use on their behalf, like Christophe will have later as king, they have their powerful intentions and their powerful will. And so Leclerc, as I mentioned, dies of yellow fever in early November 1802. His second in command, General Donatien Rochambeau, who's the son of a famous general who fought for France with the American patriots during the American Revolution. But the son, he uses tactics even more cruel than Leclerc. He sends dogs. His famous letter says, then give them blacks to eat, the dogs. If they're hungry, give them blacks to eat. So he has genocidally cruel intentions as well. But the freedom fighters, they band together. They say the various factions, those who fought previously on the side of France, those who never did, the former free men of color, we've all got to come together. And at the famous Congress at Arcaillé in mid-May of 1803, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who's become the leader of the newly rebaptized freedom fighters, calling themselves the Armée Indigène, the indigenous army, they come together at this gathering and they change their motto from liberty or death to independence or death. Now they have it in their minds that, oh no, we can't just be free of slavery, we have to be free of France. Because if we're not free of France, they can always try to come back and re-enslave us. So now we need independence. At this ceremony, local storytellers insist that Dessalines rips the white out of the French tricolor, and a woman named Catherine Flan, depicted here in this imaginative portrait by Madsen Montpremier, sews the two sides back together, and that this is how you get the current Haitian flag, which is red and blue, and also how you get the Haitian national motto, Union fait la force, or unity is strength. That those factions had to come together, and they had to come together for the purposes of independence. If we fast forward to November 1803, the French are being beaten at post after post after post. Dessalines and the other freedom fighters, they do a tactic where they retreat. They retreat into the mountains that they know very well. Haiti is a very mountainous country. One Haitian proverb says, behind the mountains, more mountains. The freedom fighters know those mountains, and they're not afraid of them, but the French are. And so they wait, and they try to draw them in, and they wait until it's hurricane season, and then they strike. They wait and let yellow fever ravish the forces of the French army, and then they rally, and they try to take that important city that Christophe had delivered to the French, Cap Français. That's pretty much their last stronghold. And at the famous Battle of Vertières, which took place on November 18th, 1803, the Haitian revolutionaries, the Armée Indigène, they are victorious. They force Rochambeau to sign articles of capitulation, to sign an evacuation agreement, and under the leadership of François Capois, known as Capois la Mort, the Haitian revolutionaries are victorious. However, it is important to recognize that just because the revolution ends and independence is going to be declared on January 1st, 1804, it doesn't mean that the trauma and the memories go away. It doesn't mean that all the divisions that existed in the colony, that they go away. People remember, and it doesn't mean that that rivalry that Napoleon Bonaparte had with his former colony now, that disappears either. And so just to give you a sense, to go back to that idea of, in Haiti, Napoleon could never be a hero to celebrate because they remember and are determined to remember every single thing that he did. Julien Prévost, writing as the Comte de Limonade under Christophe, tells us plainly why perspective is so important. He acknowledges Napoleon, he might be a hero to the French, but he says, whether or not he has the qualities of a great man hardly matters to me. If he has done great things, so be it. He extended and receded the limits of his empire. Still, what interest can I take in his greatness, in his glory even? None. I see and want to see in him only the enemy of my country, who through his agents covered it with ruins, blood, dead bodies, and wreckage. And this famous monument to Vertières, I think it's a really important monument in that it shows victory, but also it calls us to remember the fallen. This is a monument that sits in northern Haiti to this day, to ask us to remember, because one of the mottos of Haitian independence becomes never forget. Never forget that you can honor the lives of those who risked everything for freedom and independence by remembering. But again, those divisions, they do not disappear, and the rivalries, they do not disappear in independent Haiti. So January 1st, 1804, the Haitian Declaration of Independence, which makes Haiti the first country to permanently abolish slavery and the slave trade. They also outlaw colonialism, which is going to be reinforced by the first Constitution of Haiti in 1805. Haiti becomes the first modern nation anywhere in the world to take these steps to permanently abolish slavery. Under the authority of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Haiti's first ruler. First, he's governor general. Later that year in 1804, he becomes the Emperor Jacques I. He makes Christophe general-in-chief over the entire Haitian army. Everybody's working together. Pétion, whom we haven't encountered yet, he's also a general. He was, unlike these two, he had never been enslaved. He was a former person known as, one of the free men of color. He gets command in the South, and in the West, he gets different roles. He has authority as well. But those Southerners had been partial to, remember that person we learned about, and I mentioned André Rigaud, the rival of Toussaint Louverture? Well, Pétion had been partial to him, and he's from the South. So now we're going to see some regional divisions come into play. Because on October 17th, 1806, even though he hadn't ruled for that long, he's known as Haiti's founder, the Emperor Jacques I falls victim to a conspiracy organized by Pétion and a faction of Southerners who want to engage in a coup d'etat. So Haiti has already spilled all this blood to get rid of France and to become free and independent, and now, sadly, different factions in the former colony and now independent Haiti are going to turn against each other. So these Southerners, their defense was they just meant to overthrow him, not kill him, but Dessalines brought troops to try to stop them. Of course, he's an ardent fighter. He's a soldier, a general. He's not going to allow himself to be overthrown. They shoot him off his horse, stab him, and he dies here. This is a painting depicting his assassination on Pont Rouge, which is just outside Port-au-Prince in the south, where he had traveled to try to stop the conspiracy that was forming against him in the hopes of preserving the state. Well, you can only imagine such an event is only likely to lead to more conflict. And that's what happened. Initially, Christophe accepts the reins of interim head of state from those same Southerners who killed Dessalines and tried to overthrow the empire because they want to create a republic. Now, recall that republics were new, the French Republic, the US Republic, so it wasn't a sort of de facto idea or common sense idea that the freedom fighters, the armée indigène, that they would create a republic, because the only other two republics in the world at that point, modern republics, the United States and France, had slavery. Now, the empires and kingdoms did too, but it wasn't the case that, oh, that's how you shore up liberty. That's how you preserve independence, is by declaring a republic. But the Southerners think so. They want to take the United States as their motto and their model, and so they try to set up a republic. Christophe is not too interested in this. Pretty quickly, he is suspicious of this idea of setting up a republic in which there would be three different arms, a legislative body, a presidential body, a judicial body. He's pretty wary of this. He knows U.S. history as well. He's aware that this hasn't solved all of the fledgling United States' problems. But he also is deeply suspicious, as you might expect, of Pétion and his faction. After all, if they could get rid of Dessalines, couldn't they get rid of him too? And so by the first of the next year, of January 1807, Christophe is trying to now overthrow the people who've overthrown the emperor. He doesn't succeed at this, and so he flees to the north, back to his home city, now the rebaptized Cap Haïtien. It's no more Cap Français, Cap Haïtien, and he sets up his own state. He issues his own constitution, and he takes the very modest title of President and Generalissimo of the forces of the earth and seas of the state of Haiti. But they're still the Southerners, and so now Haiti's divided. Pétion becomes president of the Republic of Haiti. So if you think about the map of Haiti that you're looking at, if you draw a line from Saint-Marc and you kind of go way down close to Croix-des-Bouquets, near Mirebalais, the Haitian city of Mirebalais, that entire portion is the northern state of Haiti at first. Remember, Christophe is not yet a king, whereas that peninsula there, the long peninsula, is the Republic of Haiti. So now you have not just a differing ideology between the president of the Republic and the president of the state of Haiti, Christophe and Pétion, you have a civil war that breaks out. And so once more, where Haitians had turned their swords and their pens to France, to defeating a foreign invading army, this is a period of time in which they fight one another. They fight with a war of words, and they fight with a war of swords and guns.
C-SPAN's Lectures in History podcast continues in a moment.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with a Business Unlimited smartphone plan. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second internet plan with savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
At Rocket, we believe everyone deserves their shot at the American dream. So if you're feeling locked out of home ownership, we're here to give you back the keys. We're opening doors, breaking down walls, and doing everything we can to turn renters into owners. And we're not going to stop until we help everyone home. To find out more, visit rocket.com. Rocket, own the dream.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Now back to C-SPAN's Lectures in History podcast.
Well, Christophe decides during this period, in the middle of the Civil War, and his counselors of state, that the best way to preserve Black sovereignty in a hostile Atlantic world, where all the other islands they're surrounded by, and the United States as well, on the continent, and the South American continent as well, where there's slavery in all these places. And then, on the other side of the Atlantic, you have the slaving powers. You have France and Great Britain and Spain and Portugal, and we're alone in this world. He says, what do we need? We need the strong hand of kingly power. His counselors of state in March 1811 say, we want you to become king. He accepts. They issue a royal constitution. And on June 2nd, 1811, he is crowned king, but remember, only of northern Haiti, because President Pétion is still ruling in the south. The rest of the world viewed this with ridicule. In Italy, a broadside appears in 1813, and they're poking fun at the king. It's reprinted in all these Italian books over and over again. There's all these articles in the United States and France, and they say horribly racist things like he's trying to ape royalty, terrible, terrible things. But Christophe, remember, has his own printing press from the kingdom, housed in his palace at Sanssouci eventually. He establishes another one at his very famous citadel. And so he is able to counter these narratives by reminding the world Black kings weren't strange, for one thing, and reminding the world that he was a king in a world full of kings. So why should it be strange if he were to take this avenue? And this is the famous portrait that Christophe commissioned from a British artist named Richard Evans. It was painted in 1816. Again, he's not too concerned about images like this because he also is possessed of avenues to create an image of himself that he can put out into the world. And I think it's very interesting, the middle image I'm showing you, the Haitian painter, the Miami-based Haitian painter and artist, Edouard Duval-Carrier, tried to reimagine the Christophe Italian broadside portrait into something different, to try to make art out of what was initially supposed to be actually a caricature. And so this image here he called Henry Christophe, or the Last Dance of the Taino. The Taino, of course, being one of the names that the Europeans used to describe the indigenous population of the island before the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. So Christophe is trying to control images of his likeness and ideas about his reign and what it means. And he's also extremely interested in creating and reinforcing a free Black state that is sovereign, not dependent on any other world power, that governs itself, and that governs itself in a novel way. And so he issues in 1812 his famous Code Henri, and now the rest of the world is paying attention. So instead of ridiculing his laws, the rest of the world starts saying, there's something to these laws. Because even though the form of labor that he sets up is nothing that we would recognize as sort of unfettered free labor today, it's still, in terms of the Atlantic world, the most free labor system in the Atlantic world at the time. It sets up a form of, I describe it as a cross between sharecropping and feudalism. It sets up a system where the laborers can profit from the money that is being produced on those plantations. The plantations that have been reassigned to members of the military initially and the nobles that are supposed to be worked by free hands, and those people are supposed to share in the forms of profits. The British get a hold of this. Joseph Banks, famous naturalist, the famous Black abolitionist born right here in Connecticut, Prince Saunders, and they say this is amazing. This could be a model for what agriculture looks like going forward. And again, it is not things that we would necessarily admire as a labor system today, but in a world of slavery, this was light years ahead of what was happening around the Americas. And In Mexico, they print those codes in Spanish. They translate them and print them into Spanish. The United States prints the earliest versions from right after Christophe becomes king, prints them in English almost immediately in Philadelphia in 1811. Now the rest of the world is paying attention. And they're paying the kind of attention, interestingly, that Christophe wanted them to do. So he is using that press to really amplify what the state, initially the state of Haiti and then the Kingdom of Haiti, what they are doing. So along with thinking about how to control the narrative about what it means to be a king, images of his likeness, the laws, and making sure he's trying to be more progressive with them, but you can see some inklings of the old world laws in there as well. For example, what they called corvée in Haiti was forced labor in lieu of taxes, right? So everyone has to pay taxes. If you can't pay, then you get sent up to do labor, right? So there's a mixture and a marriage, they're sort of old world systems, again, feudalism, with some things that were transferred into the new world, but that were still not completely divested of ideas of unfree labor. They still have that idea that everyone needs to work, and if they don't work, they'll be compelled to work. But the other thing that he wants to do is he creates this entire iconography for the kingdom. Original artwork in the Armorial of Haiti, which, like so much of Haiti's patrimony, is located today outside of the country at the Royal College of Arms in London. The Armorial of Haiti contains the coat of arms of every member of the nobility. This is Henry Christophe's famous coat of arms in full color here. Thanks to the Royal College of Arms for allowing me to use this image. It shows a gold phoenix there. Under that, you can't read it, but it says Je renais de mes cendres, which means I'm reborn from my ashes, of course, the phoenix. And then under here, the ribbon says Dieu ma cause et mon épée, God is my cause and my sword, which was Henri Christophe's famous motto. We find it atop the Royal Gazette of Haiti, which is the paper printed out of his printing press. And if you go to the lagazetteroyale.com website, you can read in original PDFs and transcribed and search through more than 100 issues of the newspaper, and you can see the symbols and all of the different forms of iconography that Christophe tried to create. So he is leaving this lasting legacy of artwork, I'll show in a couple slides, of music, of opera. He is really creating a culture of Black sovereignty also. He's creating an entire culture that has recently been recognized. This is a commemorative coin. They're from the UNESCO. UNESCO had designated certain things that Christophe had built as World Heritage Sites. That's a coin commemorating the bicentennial of Haitian independence from 2004. And you see that it has the phoenix, it has his motto. And so that, even though that bicentennial was about Haitian independence, that's the image, because that's what Christophe gave to Haiti and to the world, was this form of artwork. Haitian painters as well, you've been looking at some of their artwork. I always say one of the most incredible things, especially about 20th century Haitian art, is how Haitian artists appear to have painted so many discrete moments in early 19th century Haiti, but also kind of throughout, including in the 20th century. For example, we do not have any original images of Baron de Vathey. We don't have his likeness. We have Pétion, we have Rigaud, we have so many. We don't have any of Baron de Vathey, but the name of this painting is Le Roi Henri Ier, Henry I, and Baron de Vathey. This is a Haitian artist who recognized how important Baron de Vathey was to the form of what I call Black Atlantic humanism that Christophe was trying to create, and that he wanted his ministers to kind of put out into the world. He recognized how important Vathey was to that mission as the most prolific writer. Remember, Vathey published 11 book-length works in only a span of 6 years, from 1814 to 1820. And in those works, which we'll see in a moment, he's dismantling pseudoscientific racist ideas. He takes on the European interlocutors who are trying to say that Black people are on the lowest rung of humanity. He argues for Black sovereignty. He argues for the abolition of slavery in the rest of the world. He argues for the abolition of the slave trade. So that form of Black sovereignty that is created under Christophe's rule and through the printing presses allows what Vathey said to move forward. Now that we have our own printing presses, we can say what we want. We can put our ideas out into the world. Now, the rest of the world powers they get their hands on these documents. So it's not just the laws from Haiti, it's not just those newspapers from Haiti. There are tons of foreigners in the Kingdom of Haiti. Why? They're trading with Haiti. Great Britain is the Kingdom of Haiti's largest trading partner. And you would think it would be sugar. No, coffee. That's what they were getting. They were getting coffee, the exports of coffee from the Kingdom of Haiti to Great Britain, astonishing, and then to a lesser extent to the United States, to Denmark, to various other countries in Europe, both Western Europe and Eastern Europe, in fact. But they also get their hands, as Vate wanted them to, on those books and pamphlets that he was writing. And so today, it's one of his lesser-known writings, his book called Reflections. It was translated into English later on as Reflections on the Blacks and Whites from 1816. But we're going to talk about before it was translated. So it appears in English translation in 1817. But before that, the original French makes its way to Jamaica through a man named Thomas Strafford, who was a white British colonist who had lived for a time in the Kingdom of Haiti. He was originally from Kingston. He stayed there for quite some time in Haiti. Then he went back home to Kingston. But think about how Great Britain, England in particular, they're trading with Haiti. But in the colonies, it's a different story. Remember, they still have slavery in effect in Jamaica. So here comes this guy, and he shows up with a pamphlet of Baron de Vate's, in which Vate is dismantling the idea that Africans are on a lower rung of humanity, which is the entire propagandistic arm of slavery and the slave trade on the European side of things. Whether or not they are just creating this theory to shore up slavery doesn't matter. Vate sees what they're doing, he sees the propaganda machine, and he dismantles it one by one and takes apart their arguments. So Strafford shows up back in Jamaica with this pamphlet. His effects are searched. The indictment against him when he's arrested is 38 pages long, longer than any of the other indictments in the register that I looked at. And why? It contains original passages in French transcribed from Vate's Reflections on a letter from Mazère, because that's his main person Vate was responding to, the French colonist Mazère. And then it contains English translation. The first English translation of this work, in part, is not the 1817 translation that's actually published, but the 1816 version and 1817 version that appears in this indictment. It's meant to prove that Strafford published several wicked, scandalous, malicious seditions and inflammatory libels. The indictment goes on to say that he must be colluding with Christophe. They want to bring slave revolt and rebellion to Jamaica, and their only piece of evidence against Strafford is the fact that he has this pamphlet. So this is the work that they're talking about. This is the original you're looking at here, and then you're looking at, on the other side, the 1817 official English translation, which is probably why Strafford had the book with him. The abolitionists and quote-unquote, they called themselves Friends of the Blacks, they would take material that could help aid in the struggle against slavery, the cause of abolition, and they would take it and they would translate it, or they would try to get it published in other places. For example, if something was published in England, they would smuggle it out and try to publish it in the United States, despite the fact that there were lots of anti-sedition laws in places like New Orleans, for example, in the United States as well. And the reason I think this is because Thomas Strafford was there at the same time as the official translator of this work. So WHMB is William Hamilton, and MB is for his master's in botany, for his degree. They were there in the Kingdom of Haiti at the same time. So that is probably why Strafford had the pamphlet or book with him. And despite what happened, the book did go on to be published anyway and circulate all around. There's so many reviews of it. The Friends of Abolition did take heed and take note. But what happened to Strafford? Well, actually, Strafford, maybe he's a genius of some sort. He goes on trial. The Jamaican newspapers, they catalog this trial like this is news to them. So you're looking at two of the different progressions of they're describing what is happening. So he's supposed to stay in jail until his trial finishes, so he does. And his defense is, I don't know anything about Christophe or the Kingdom of Haiti. It must have been my Haitian housekeeper who snuck those documents into my suitcase. And the verdict against him was that he was guilty of having the seditious libel, but he was innocent of free intent. So he got out with just paying a fine and the time served because he had no ill intent. But on his trial, he said, no, I don't even know, I don't know Christophe, never met him. And then I'm just showing you here from the Royal Gazette of Haiti. Strafford is there, his name is there. This is a table of foreigners who are celebrating a big event in the Kingdom of Haiti. So he definitely knows Christophe, he's definitely there. And when we look into Christophe's letters, we see that Christophe and Strafford and Hamilton, the translator, have both been given commissions by Christophe, so they were working on his behalf. He actually was one of the many foreign agents that Christophe had working on his behalf. But nevertheless, got himself free and not necessarily acquitted of the charge, but at least nothing more severe happened to him. But I do want to return back to that indictment for a second. So I mentioned there were transcriptions, and then translations of large passages. Just to give you a sense of the struggle that the Kingdom of Haiti, that independent Haiti, the entire place, but the Kingdom of Haiti is charged with, that they're engaged with, this is one of the passages that was supposed to prove that Strafford wanted to bring sedition and slave rebellion to the island of Jamaica. A passage in which Vate, who again has gone through, he's systematically dismantling pseudoscientific arguments about race. And then he's tired, and he says, I have been tempted 20 times to throw away my pen. I feel humiliated. I am a man. I feel it to be so in all my being. I possess all of the faculties. I have thought, reason, strength. I have every sense of my sublime existence, and I find myself obliged to refute puerile arguments, absurd sophisms, just to prove to men like me that I am their equal. And this is in the indictment. This is evidence that you want to bring sedition and slave revolt and rebellion. So a statement of Black humanity, this is their evidence. And so here you're seeing Baron de Vate's coat of arms. This is his coat of arms from the Armorial of Haiti. Perhaps it's fitting for a writer, especially of his caliber, that his motto is sincerity and frankness, or truth, right? So Christophe is known for this amazing Black thought that is coming out, Black sovereignty, this vision that he has for a free Black kingdom in the middle of all the slaving colonies and empires and world powers. And he knows, though, that France still wants to bring back slavery. When Napoleon Bonaparte is overthrown the first time in 1814, and the Bourbon monarch, Louis XVIII, comes back to power, almost the first thing he does is try to send an expedition, the French king, to Haiti to try to, quote unquote, restore the colony of Saint-Domingue, which means to bring back slavery. So Christophe, in that light, has been right to be working on the Citadelle La Ferrière, the largest fortress in North America, widely hailed as the 8th wonder of the world. You're looking at an image of it here. It's vast like a city. It has its own printing press. It has a castle. It can house 30,000 people. It has ammunition and cannons, and much of which is still there today. The restoration of this fortress was successful. But you can also see it's hard to get there. You can kind of see the path. The path that leads to the Citadel winds up one of Haiti's highest mountains, and this is on the top of it, at a dangerous 35-degree angle. Today, to get to the top, you've got to ride a donkey. You cannot take a car or any other wheeled instrument except maybe a wheelbarrow to carry the supplies that the workers, the many, many thousands of workers, some of whom did lose their lives building this structure because it's dangerous work. This is dangerous, hard work. And think about in Haiti, there's a rainy season and there's a rainy season and a dry season. And the work has to continue in both of those because the work had to get done. And Christophe told the people, we have to do this as a protection against France. And so when the restored Bourbon monarch organizes this expedition, the 3 French spies come and they do try to sow division and rebellion and lay the groundwork for French reinstatement. That only convinces the people that Christophe was right. Now remember, Napoleon Bonaparte escapes from the island of Elba. He returns to Paris. The troops the French king sent against him join his troops, and for 100 days he rules again in France until the British defeat him once more, exile him to St. Helena, or the Allied powers, I should say, exile him further away to St. Helena. And guess what that restored Bourbon monarch does the second time around? He sends another expedition, if you can believe it. He sends more commissioners 2 other times after that to try to restore the colony of Saint-Domingue. And every time in the newspaper, you would read the accounts, you would see the letters printed. They saved all the letters from the commissioners. They would send them these threatening letters. They would say things like, if you don't surrender to France, you're going to be treated as savages and hunted down as maroon Negroes. Literally, that's their phrase. They would say, they would call Christophe not King of Haiti, they would call him General Christophe, his name in the colonial era when he was in the French army. They referred to the island of Haiti as Saint-Domingue, to punctuate, like, you're still our colony. You could have declared your independence and changed your name to Haiti, but you're still our colony. And so much of what Christophe was doing during this time period was posturing to the rest of the world, which wasn't just posturing. He has an enormous army. He builds the citadel, which is the awe of the world, even in its own era. And he says, we'll fight you. One of Baron de Vate's famous phrases from the Royal Gazette is, well, if they must come, the French, let them come. The more who come, the more we will kill. They're saying, when we say liberty or death, independence or death, we mean it. We actually mean it. And we will fight. He creates this entire culture around his idea that he has for black sovereignty as well. And he enlists the greatest minds in the kingdom. So not just Baron de Vate or Julien Prévost, whom we've encountered elsewhere, but also Juste Chanlat, acting as the Comte de Rosiers. They perform operas at court. They have ballets. They create original music and symphonies. He's saying, I want this to be a place where people thrive. He creates an entire school system, first in Cap Henri. So it went from Cap Français to Cap Haitien. Now it's Cap Henri. And then he recruits British school teachers to come and set up schools all around the kingdom. And the idea is to have free education for all. He's encouraged in this endeavor by Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce, the famous British abolitionists, who send him teachers who want to go. He says, I'm going to change the language of Haiti from French, not to Haitian Creole, they weren't quite there in their thinking, but to English, because we must get rid of all the vestiges of the French. We can't use the colonizer's language, was his idea, and then have a colonial-free mentality. He also wanted to change the religion of the country from Roman Catholicism, the official religion, according to his constitution, to Anglicanism. He never did that officially, but he wrote to try to tell William Wilberforce that that was his aim and that was what he wanted to do. But of course, the flip side of Christophe's rule that has to be mentioned is that despite having accomplished all of this, magnificent accomplishments, admirable accomplishments, we have to remember the forms of unfreedom that still persisted. We have to remember the many, many laborers who lost their lives building the citadel, those who were forced to toil there, and also those who were sent to prison there. The biggest offense in the Kingdom of Haiti was sedition and being accused of trying to conspire against the government. Now remember, Christophe has France to worry about. He's worried about France. He needs to play nice with England so that this lucrative trade can continue, but he has the Southern Republic. And so what could you do if you had an enemy? Or maybe it could be true as well. You could say, was conspiring with the Southern Republic. And all of what the citadel was in its sort of magnificent glory of how it looks was also a prison. And so if you were accused of sedition or conspiracy and there was evidence against you and you went to trial and you were found guilty, you went up to the citadel and you usually didn't come out. And then again, this is a depiction from Jacques Richard Chéry, the Haitian painter, depicting that labor. And part of that labor and wealth that the Kingdom of Haiti was building, yes, it went to schools, it went to the military, it went to these projects of defense. It went to roads. It went to repairing houses after hurricanes and lightning strikes and fires. but it also enriched the royal family. They had more than a dozen carriages. The British, who think that this is amazing because they're ordering the carriages from England, are publishing it, talking about how beautiful they are, how the designs that Christophe sends to them are so original, that these carriages are designed to like shield you from the sun and heat that you have in Haiti, problems that you wouldn't have in England. So they write about them in the British press, about the amazing designs of these carriages. And you're seeing here a depiction of one of those carriages, of course, painted much later by the famous Haitian painter Sénèque Aubin. They also build a very opulent palace called Sans Souci in Milo, Haiti. This palace, visitors would go to see it in the era. They had to see it. They compared it to the Louvre. They compared it to Tuileries. Some said it resembled Frederick the Great's summer chateau in Potsdam, that it was considered a remarkable architectural achievement all on its own. This first image here, I'd like to just to point out that this is by a Haitian painter, a young Haitian painter from the era, we believe around 1816, named Numa Desroches. Christophe had sort of de facto adopted him and had him educated with his own children in the palace, and he paints this very famous painting of the kingdom there, one of the only paintings we have from the era. So most of the rest of them are painted after the fact or drawn after the fact. This is one of the only ones from the era. But unlike the Citadel, sadly, the palace at Sans Souci did not survive the 1842 earthquake that hit northern Haiti with its epicenter near Cap-Haïtien. It's estimated in today's terms to be about an 8.1 magnitude. Its tremors were felt as far away as the US state of Arkansas. And in fact, when this earthquake hit New Orleans, the people of New Orleans, it was so strong still, coming from across the ocean, thought that it was their earthquake. They thought that's where the earthquake had happened, until much later when they realized, oh, the earthquake, it was actually an earthquake that was in Haiti, and it was felt in New Orleans. But so that's how strong it was, that it was strongly enough felt there that the people of New Orleans thought that the earthquake was actually centered there. Although it crumbles the palace, a huge tsunami comes, sadly, which is one of the effects that happens from earthquakes sometimes. The palace crumbles, but the ruins of it remain. And like the Citadel, it has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the entire kind of park around that area. Archaeologists have also recreated the palace using the plans. We have the plans of the palace. We have tons of images of it from the era and from today, and they've been able to, using 3D technology, recreate the palace to a certain extent where you can even sort of envision various rooms. But I wanted to just show you some original photography here. This is the staircase leading up with the two, you see, flanked staircases on the side, the hall of mirrors there, just to give you a sense of what it's like to just stand there before it today, even as it is, not in its intact state and it's damaged beyond the state that it could be restored ever, and so it will stay the way that it is. Christophe lives in this palace with the royal children of Haiti, his son, the heir, Prince Victor Henri, his two daughters, Améthyste and Athénaïre, and he loves portraiture, and he has their portraits drawn as well. And this one, thankfully, was returned to Haiti. It's in Mupana, which is the main Haitian museum in Port-au-Prince. That's where it is today. It was found a few years back, and then was in the Haitian embassy in Washington, D.C. for a time, and then was repatriated a few years ago back to Haiti, and is now in Mupana. But you can see their kind of opulent dress there. So they are really sinking into the idea of modern royalty. They are also known for their parties. This is an image from Saint-Louis Blaise, trying to depict one of these parties that they are known and famous for, where they would play in the opera music, the original opera music, where they would have ballets, where they would put on theatrical pieces for the benefit of the nobles. And the newspaper often describes these parties in painstaking detail, and would describe the people of Haiti as kind of peering in through the windows, right? So they can see everything that's going on that they're not really a part of also, right? And they describe it, they describe the people as saying, "Vive Henri, vive la reine, long live the queen, long live the king." But one has to wonder, those faces looking in who can't really partake, that can see everything, what they must be thinking. I hope that one day, just as we've recovered now the portrait of the children, that we'll find a portrait of Queen Marie-Louise, who we don't have any known likenesses of her from the era. Christophe, again, loved portraiture, so probably he had her painted as well. He had all these foreign artists in the kingdom painting him and the children, and also Haitian artists as well, like Numa Desroches. This is a bust of an unknown woman outside of the palace at Sans-Souci. Sometimes people have said, oh, that might be Queen Marie-Louise. I don't really think so. I think it's probably a goddess of the theater, a muse of the theater, because you see the kind of thespian mask there, and also the way she's dressed is not really the regal dress of a queen, right? The way, if you juxtapose it with the way the children are displayed. But nonetheless, what we do have has provided artists, just as with Christophe, for ways of reimagining, this era and thinking about the Queen's life. This is a Christophian era dress, just to give you a sense of what they actually looked like, from Mupana, that's in the museum. And this is a contemporary artist, Fiorle Baez, who's Dominican and Haitian, and is US-based now. And she calls this installation For Marie-Louise Croix David, Christophe's wife, Exiled Keeper of Order. So that's her piece. Just different ways for us to imagine the people who are in the story, but who's they don't come into the frame as clearly, and they aren't as well documented in the historical or artistic record. Christophe, again, his life, highly documented. His death, highly documented as well. This painting is called The Last Days of Christophe. If people wanted to overthrow Christophe before he becomes ill, we don't know. What we do know is that on August 15th, 1820, Christophe is in the city of Limonade. He's there for two reasons. He's there to celebrate the Catholic feast of Assumption and his wife's feast day, and those coincide that year. His wife's feast day is August 15th. He's in the church, the priest is giving a sermon, and all of a sudden, Christophe falls to the ground with a huge thud and hits his head. And he appears to be unconscious. His Scottish doctor, Dr. Duncan Stewart, revives him, but it's clear when he comes to that he's paralyzed. He's partially paralyzed. This starts making people in the kingdom think about what life would be like without him. Now remember, he has an heir, Prince Victor Henri, who's technically supposed to take over in the event that something like this would happen. But did it cause the nobles to also start to think about and imagine themselves in the place of the king? Did it cause the Southerners in the Republic to think this is their moment, this is their chance? The royal press of Haiti, the Royal Gazette, is curiously silent during this time. They don't say, the king's doing fine, he's convalescing, don't worry, our projects are still going forward, you're safe, or the king's not doing well, we fear for his life. They don't give any information. They don't provide any news. In fact, we don't have those issues. Were they even printing anything, or did they decide, let's just not tell the people what happened? Since there were people there, obviously, but, how far did the information go? Well, a conspiracy forms against him, a conspiracy that initially is led by nobles from the kingdom, the Comte de la Marmelade, who was a general in the revolution as well, General Richard. And Christophe has by this time started to get better. Like so many people do, sometimes after having a stroke, he convalesces for a while and then he starts to get better. But it's too late to stop the conspiracy. Christophe gets wind of it, I'd say about a week, a little bit more than a week before his death, but it's hard to convince him of how deep the conspiracy runs. Just like with Napoleon, every time he sends troops to stop the advancement of the rebellion, they join with the rebellion. Now the Southern Republic is involved, and you're hearing cries in the streets of the kingdom for the first time in its existence, Vive la République. Can you imagine, right? I mean, this is a place that has been ardently fighting the Republic of Haiti in civil war, and that's what you're hearing in the streets. And so he sends one last military delegation to stop them, and when those troops defect as well, he tells Duncan Stewart, the doctor, I know what I have to do, and he shoots himself in the heart So that's what you're seeing depicted here, and then a more contemporary image of his funeral there. And this is after a painting, we think, from the 19th century that has recently been recovered. But it's too dark, it doesn't show up on the screen because it needs to be restored. But it's it's almost the same. There are very, very few details that are different. So most likely after somebody who had been present at the time. I always say it would be irresponsible to leave the story there, because certainly a great leader, but also one with huge, enormous flaws, an imperfect rule that is important for us to think about, but isn't the end of the story. After Christophe dies, Pétion is already dead by this time. He died in March 1818. His successor, a man named Jean-Pierre Boyer, who had also fought in the Haitian Revolution, comes to power, and he wants several things. He wants to reunify the north and south of Haiti. He does that after Christophe's death. He also wants to reunify with the eastern side of the island, Santo Domingo, which is today the Dominican Republic. By 1822, he does that as well. But he also wants recognition from France. So remember, Great Britain, the United States, all these world powers are trading with Haiti, both sides of Haiti, but mostly with the kingdom, but they're not recognizing Haitian independence. They're still calling him Saint-Domingue, right? And Boyer's like, we need to get rid of this. We need to get rid of this system. Unfortunately, his idea of getting rid of this system was entering into a treaty with now the King of France, who's Charles X, Louis XVIII's brother. And Charles X comes up with this idea that I call the greatest heist in history, that Haiti will pay France 150 million francs as the price of the recognition of Haitian independence. Imagine, remember, Napoleon Bonaparte sells the Louisiana territory, which more than doubles the size of the United States. He sells that territory to Thomas Jefferson in the Louisiana Purchase for 80 million francs, 15 million US, 80 million francs. So Haiti, which is tiny, the size of Massachusetts, and the price is almost double that, 150 million francs, and it's for supposedly compensation for what the colonists lost, including their lands and the people that they had enslaved. This bankrupts independent Haiti. This bankrupts the Republic of Haiti, which is now the entire island, so it actually affects the part in this time period that's the Dominican Republic as well. Boyer rewrites the Haitian laws to reclassify essentially all Haitian citizens as laborers and tells them to go back to the countryside and start making money so we can pay France. Haiti initially makes the first two payments that are 30 million francs. Because for me, the question is, okay, he signed it, but why did he pay it? He makes the first two payments, 30 million francs, and then defaults. What was France going to do? They send another expedition. Dozens of brigs of war with hundreds of cannons in 1838 to create a new treaty of friendship under the French king at that time, Louis Philippe. I should also mention that during the first treaty, they had sent 14 brigs of war carrying hundreds of cannons as well. So why did he do it? Was he really afraid of war or not? Did he really think France was going to fight them? Unclear. By the second time, he signs the new Treaty of Friendship, which of course not a treaty of friendship, and they reduce the total amount owed to 90 million francs. So now Haiti owes France 60 million francs, but here's the kicker. They've got to take out huge loans at high interest rates in order to pay France, and they don't finish paying that initial debt, because it's a double debt now, the initial debt plus the interest and loans and fees. They don't finish paying that until the 1880s, and the double debt until 1947. 1947. So that's why we call it a double debt, and why I always say the greatest heist in history, to get a formerly enslaved people to pay you for what they won at the price of their blood, of the price of human people. And so King Henry's legacy to me is, yes, the buildings that he built, the architecture that remains, the culture, the art, the history, the songs, the story, but it is also his undying quest for sovereignty for Haiti, that Haiti would have its own sovereignty, free of foreign powers who would impose debt on it. And I hope that when we think about his legacy and what we can take away from it today, that this is what remains. Thank you very much. I really hope that you'll ask some questions now, as I'm sure you must have them.
Hi.
Hi.
I just sort of wanted your professional comment on why you think Christophe might have defected to the French, if he actually believed Leclerc's promise.
I'm really glad that you asked this because I, for reasons of time, left out part of the story that is pretty important, actually, which has to do with, remember I said Toussaint Louverture was going to suffer for that? But somebody else very close to Christophe suffered. He had another son whose name was François Ferdinand, who was born the year of emancipation in 1794, so 1 year after Christophe and Marie-Louise get married. Just like Toussaint Louverture had previously sent his sons to be educated in France, Christophe sent his son there. And he sent his son there right after he defected to the French. It was probably an agreement. He really wanted his son to have a French education, but the French were only letting certain people in, and it was kind of a favoritism system. So I think that had something to do with it. And then I think the reason it takes him, he doesn't redefect until October 1802, but if you look at the correspondence, the French are complaining about him the whole summer, saying he's not doing what we want him to do, we don't think that we can trust him, that he was trying to wait till he knew his son got there to France. Because remember, it takes a while to get there. Wait till he got there, because he doesn't think that the French are going to harm his child, because they sent Louverture's children back, they sent André Rigaud's children back, who had been educated there. But sadly, what the French do pretty quickly after Christophe joins the Armée Indigène or defects to the side of the freedom fighters, they throw his son out of the school into an orphanage, and he ends up dying in the streets of Paris in July 1805. And this absolutely devastates Christophe. So I think he made a kind of a calculation, and he thought, remember at this time, they're like the French colonists are the evil ones. France, they're not necessarily so sure of. They know Leclerc, they're against Leclerc, Bonaparte maybe, but the French people, they wouldn't allow something like this to happen to a child. And later in the kingdom, they make songs to Ferdinand, and they continue to toast him throughout the reign, that this is, he calls it the most devastating perfidy of his life. And so it really affects him. So yes, thank you for that question that allowed me to tell that part of the story, which is just horribly sad, but an important part.
I have a question if no one else has one. I wonder, you talk a lot about how the images of Henry Christophe circulate sort of in the Atlantic world, specifically in response to European images created, or caricatures rather, created of the king. Are there any, is there any documentation of how those portraits and how those images are received, or if they are received by Black Americans, or if there's any sort of response beyond sort of the response to the code of law that you mentioned, and what that response is?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great question. Well, yes, right? So the example I'll give is actually a later example from Freedom's Journal, responding to a British, not necessarily portrait in like a written portrait of Queen Marie-Louise. So after Christophe dies, she stays for a while. She's arrested. The daughters are arrested. Her son, the heir to the throne, is executed. Baron de Vatte is executed. Anybody who was seen as a diehard Christophe loyalist is executed. Not Chanlot and Prévost, interestingly, who go on to live in the Republic and have illustrious careers after. But Christophe's son, from a previous relationship, the heir to the throne, but the women are spared. They live in Port-au-Prince for a time, and then they go to England, where they're poked fun at, and then they go to Italy. And they're spied in Italy one day, and a British writer writes down, and he says terrible things about them. He's calling them names, he's commenting on their appearance and about how they're black in this white space, and just, using all the kind of racist stereotypes you might imagine. And Freedom's Journal, out of the United States, the first black newspaper, they defend her. They say, this is terrible. We have people who know her, who have met her, and the fact that you would defame this woman and her children in this way, permit us to give you a contrary portrait. And they talk about, they print an opposite portrait of her to basically counter that. So they absolutely were sensitive to how this image the image of the Kingdom of Haiti even long after the fact, because this is like into the late 1820s when Freedom's Journal does this. They also print excerpts of Baron de Watte's writings, and not even the colonial system unveiled the other writings, the essay on the causes of the revolution and some of his other writings in short form to say, look here, what was created by this kingdom. So while they don't necessarily respond, for example, to the Italian broadside, they are able to imagine what is in the European and sort of, dominant U.S. white imaginary about the king, and they try to counter it in the black press. And Prince Saunders, of course, during Christophe's era with his Haitian papers, was one who tried to do that as well. But I should also mention Christophe there are two different versions at least of the Evans portrait. Christophe sent one of them to Wilberforce. He sent it to Wilberforce and so that this could be on display in England. And then Richard Evans takes another copy. The reason we think there's probably three is because we imagine Christophe probably kept one for himself. So Richard Evans displays that. And those things were written about in the sort of halls where artists would display their work. And later, Robert Douglas Jr. as well, in portraits that we haven't recovered. It was written about in William Lloyd Garrison's The Liberator. Later in the 1830s, he travels to Haiti, but this is in the Republic under Boyer. He paints Haitian ladies, he paints Haitian heads of state, and this is written about, again, in The Liberator and in the press and reprinted, and it is that idea that black portraiture matters, and the way that it's described for the public is important. So yeah, they respond to it, not necessarily directly, but they are in fact responding to the idea that this person is someone whose life would be caricatured rather than described and studied, really, and preserved documents from the kingdom. And then also that it's an interesting subject, again, for Robert Douglas Jr. to want to go and paint, the symbol to them of black freedom, because there was still slavery in the United States. So to them, this was, despite the turmoil, this was a symbol of black freedom, and they wanted to record it and visit and document it and bring it home, bring word of it home back to the United States.
Earlier in the presentation, we learned that Henry Christophe was a force in the American Revolution. And I was wondering if you believe that having Henry Christophe he was a very successful leader for Haitians, and having him come from the American Revolution, does that almost silence the Haitian Revolution's own power in that it's not an imitation or extension of other revolutions in the era?
Yeah, that's a great question, because, of course, the Haitian Revolution has often been written about as an imitation, usually of the French Revolution, but that the idea can't, come to the enslaved freedom fighters on their own. But I think one of the things you have to remember is that Christophe and the other freedom fighters from the Savannah days, they joined. They're usually joining the revolution. They weren't in that bois caïman ceremony. So I think that provides a fuller picture of Christophe's life, and also to understand what ideas were going around in the era. But if you think about, they might think about independence, which, remember, doesn't come into their frame of the freedom fighters until much later. They're first wanting to end slavery. So that's how we know this is their own original idea, because both of the other revolutions in the era they were not about ending slavery. And they were not about equality in racial terms. They're about maybe overthrowing monarchies. They're about overthrowing colonial power and becoming independent of a colonial power. But neither the French Revolution or on its face or the American Revolution has ending slavery as the goal. Remember the Declaration of the Rights of Man from 1789 in France. They don't mention anything about slavery or even the free people of color and what their status will be in this new kind of setup or new conception of how people should figure into relations with the state, with state power. So I think it's more about just fleshing out his life. And I think if he does learn things from the American Revolution, it's military tactics and actually what not to do. Because they lose this battle, and the Comte d'Estaing, who's the French general in charge of it, they lose it because he waits too long. And actually, this maybe is one reason why when Leclerc comes, Christophe I'm not going to wait forever. and he takes action. He had an experience and saw a disaster happen when people waited too long. So I think it's probably more on a military tactical level, which makes sense that if you fight and you are in the military, you're going to take certain things away from that, especially at that young age of 12, when it would make quite an impression to see what happens when someone in power makes a huge mistake.
Great presentation, first off. I have like 2 questions,
Okay.
and they're on the basis of like restitution and reparations. In current like history, we have Emmanuel Macron, the president of Haiti, not Haiti, of France, very clear, he would hate that, talking about how Haiti is very much, their issues are because of them, but he does not address the double debt, and he also doubles down on how he called the Haitian people complete morons on dismissing the current PM. So do you see a world where people like Macron or other, even like US politicians understand the double debt and also come to comprehend like how that puts this country in the hole that it was? Because if America had to pay a debt to Britain for being free, we wouldn't possibly have been as advanced as we are right now. So do you see in the most optimistic light that ever happening?
I would like to believe that tides continue to turn. I don't want to say the tide is turning, but it's churning. And I think overwhelmingly in public opinion, after we've talked about how the New York Times published a famous series called Ransom, in which they brought new and greater attention to this double debt, to this issue. They weren't able, unfortunately, to get Emmanuel Macron's office to respond, to give them a comment to include, so which is also very telling, because Macron's predecessors had sometimes stuck their foot in their mouths, for lack of a better term, by saying we owe a huge debt to Haiti, and then having to walk that back and saying, no, I meant like a moral debt, was what the previous president, one of the previous presidents had said. Jacques Chirac wouldn't even acknowledge it, was like, France has nothing to do with that, this is a non-starter as a conversation. And I think I always say that in order for redress and restitution to happen, which can look like different things, there's repayment, which I think absolutely needs to happen, but that's not the only form of redress and restorative justice that can happen there. Because if you think about the money on the face of it, it's estimated to be between 22 billion and 44 billion US dollars that France would owe Haiti in repayment, adjusted for inflation. The reason for the wide discrepancy depends on how you calculate it, how you calculate the interest over the years, and how you calculate also the fact that this agreement hurt Haiti's lucrative trade with Great Britain, which was how they were getting a lot of money for their projects, because Haiti was forced to give France most favored nation status. So now it hurts their trade with the United States, with Great Britain, and the other powers they were trading with. And in that light, the estimate that France would owe Haiti is more than $100 billion. But when you think about the amount of money that the major world powers spend on defense, it sounds like a lot of money, but when you think about the amount that they spend on other things and what they could use the money for in Haiti, various projects, stabilizing the government, roads, schools, infrastructure, hospitals. So people say sometimes Macron's statement about guerre connue and Haitians being a sort of morons for wanting to get rid of this interim prime minister, which is obviously a ridiculous statement that he had to walk back, or at least try to minimize. That instead of that, think about ways in which there could be restorative justice that doesn't look like occupation, because that's, I think, where we're locked right now, is that the only thing that the world powers can imagine in the name of helping Haiti is occupation. Instead of thinking about, well, what will Haitians do with the money, collaborate together in thinking about what actual form of justice could take place. We cannot erase the past. We cannot repair the past. We can only make sure that the future is different. And in terms of whether I think this will actually happen, I think we have to make it happen. I think about the revolutionaries and how the world was against them. And it's a stark example, but it's true. The world was against them and said it was actually impossible and no one would support them in this endeavor, and they did it anyway. And that is one of the reasons I think that the Christophean era is so important. For all of his flaws as a leader, Haiti was on a path. Where would that path have gone? He would have died one day or been overthrown naturally. And what would have taken its place? Would it have been a coercive system, which is what we saw with Boyer? Or would someone else have naturally risen to power who wouldn't have given in to this demand, even at the sort of coercive, manipulative level in which it came? What would have happened? That's what we don't know. But we do know what happened without Christophe. And that's why I think it's so important to understand this era and how Haitian history unfolded in the aftermath of the revolution. So not just the revolution itself.
And the second question was, we talked about amazing artists throughout the different periods of portraits and even covering the revolution. Something that is, I think, interesting to me is there is a huge issue within the art world, even Greece is facing it, of having such, essential pieces of history being locked away in personal or private collections. Famously, the Three Sisters in Greece, and how they have a spot for her, and the British Museum is refusing to ever give it back. So with that example being said, do you know of, or is there a movement to have these great pieces, great historical value pieces returned to Haiti, and is there a place for them to be stored safely?
Yes, so those are two different sides, right, of the coin, and they're very important because, as I mentioned, that portrait of the Christophe children, of the royal children of Haiti, was repatriated. But sometimes it depends on the will of the person doing the purchasing. So the Numa des Roches, I mentioned, there's one version in Haiti, and Sotheby's recently auctioned off another version that we think is the final version because it has some key differences. It has a legend and numbers that would explain to somebody looking at it what the different buildings were, who they housed and who lived there in the Palace of Sanssouci painting from 1816. But now that's in private hands, as you mentioned. So I don't think that there's any concerted movement, but there is at the grassroots level, people are having the conversation when such items go up for auction, helping Haitian institutions like Mupana to purchase them, which is what happened when a copy of the autopsy, Toussaint Louverture's autopsy, went up, that a group of us got together to help institutions in Haiti be able to purchase the document because they will go for tens of thousands of dollars. These documents, people will sell them, and the paintings, and they will sell them for tens of thousands of dollars. But on the question of can they be stored safely, well, right now, sadly, the situation in Haiti is perilous at the political level and from a restoration level, because Port-au-Prince is the place that has the most museums and libraries and archives. And so I would say that if there is any desire at the moment for different documents to be returned, it must be done in collaboration and conversation with Haitian conservationists and archivists who would be aware of the challenges and what needs to happen, because I often hear people say, oh, let's send it back to Haiti, but we have to remember that things that we conceive of here in the United States, that we have to be in conversation and collaboration with Haitians in Haiti to see what is the best thing to do. Some of the documents from Haiti that are in foreign repositories were not stolen, many of them. Like newspapers, they were given to foreigners who visited the kingdom to take back home to spread the news, right? So I wouldn't want us to just assume that anything that's outside of the country was quote unquote stolen, instead of, some of the artwork in the Fig Museum from the 20th century, those were artists donating it. That library, or that museum in Iowa has probably the greatest collection of Haitian art. It's you think, why there of any place potentially in the world on its own, but really digging into the history of that, and that if there are forms of collaboration, we want Haitian artwork to be out there in the world. Like French artwork can be found in the New York Public Library, but we need to make sure, is it ethical? We need to ask the questions about provenance that I think you're really getting at, which is how they got there. Because that's an important question to determine whether or not, if there ever is a project, the project of repatriation would be one way to move forward.
C-SPAN's Lectures in History podcast continues in a moment.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
This President's Day, upgrade the look of your home without breaking your budget. Save up to 40% site-wide on new window treatments at Blinds.com. Blinds.com makes it easy with free virtual consultations on your schedule and samples delivered to your door fast and free. With over 25 million windows covered and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, you can count on Blinds.com to deliver results you'll love. Shop Blinds.com's President's Day mega sale last chance now for up to 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Now back to C-SPAN's Lectures in History podcast.
You mentioned religion when it came to Christophe and Anglicanism. What I was wondering, how strong the role that religion played not only in that instance, but then also like the Civil War and the differences between like Pétion and Christophe, and like, did religion influence the war in that way? But then also like Toussaint and all these different like people, like how strong was religion in like their differences?
Absolutely. Great question, because, Toussaint professed devout Catholicism, and in the constitution that he created for Saint-Domingue, which said the colony would remain free and French, because remember, he's not an independentist at that moment, and he doesn't live to see Haitian independence, but his Constitution says Saint-Domingue, the only religion that can be professed in public, which is key, is Catholicism. So he's aware that there are other forms of spirituality taking place on the island, what we would call Haitian Vodou today, but which they referred to by other names in the 18th century and the early 19th century. They sometimes called it Vaudun, which is a dance. They sometimes referred to it as Macandalism. They had different names to describe, sometimes they used the term magic to describe the other forms of religion that were taking place outside of the kind of established avenues of Catholicism, because that's the French religion at the time as well. So it does play a role in terms of competing conceptions of the world and what, of course, an independent state would look like. So Dessalines' constitution technically creates freedom of religion, but we see that during his reign, he and Christophe, as the general-in-chief of the Haitian army, cracked down on those practicing quote-unquote magic, right? And dancing the Macandal, because they say that these are revolutionary religions, because at the ceremony of Bois Caïman, the idea is that this was a kind of Vodou ceremony, again, using today's parlance rather than the 18th century words for that form of spirituality and religion. But that was the idea, was that was what was moving forward, that question of the God of the white man, which is a Christian God, and then the God of the black man, which is another one, a different one who wants freedom and justice and equality for the people of the whole island. And so there's those conceptions that come to bear that pits the state against the people, because if you say, that there's freedom of religion, but there's really not, and you jail people for it, which is what happened, and you accuse them of crimes, then leading into Christophe, he says, nope, Catholicism is the state religion, so he does a complete 360, because even Toussaint Louverture had said in his constitution, Catholicism, the only religion that can be professed in public. And Christophe's administration does crack down on those who are practicing Vodou. He at one point does use that. He calls it le Vodou, spelled differently than we do today, but that's what he calls it. So he does actually crack down on it. Whereas over in the Republic, things are a bit different. They are also entertaining Protestant ministers, Methodist ministers from the United States. They've got a lot of abolitionists, a very religious Protestant abolitionists from the United States circulating around who bring the King James Bible in. And interestingly, instead of Christophe digging in his heels, what does he do? He starts inviting Anglicans in and says, I want to talk to those abolitionists as well. And in fact, the first, as we know of, English or French translation of the British Book of Common Prayer, the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, is for Haiti, undertaken by the royal press of Haiti. That idea of, let's see how the populace responds to Anglicanism. And his argument to William Wilberforce, when he explains why he wants to bring Anglican orders and change the religion of Haiti, his argument is that French priests were furthering slavery, that they are the friends of slavery rather than the enemies of slavery, which he viewed, for example, Quakers, he viewed Methodists, Wesleyan ministers. He viewed them as the enemies of slavery, that they are the friends of humanity as they profess to be. And he said French priests, they always, kind of reinforced slavery here. So let's get away from that. But as I mentioned, at his death, he's in the Catholic Church. He's celebrating the Feast of the Assumption. There's a Catholic priest saying the Mass. So he said those things, how serious he was about actually putting them into operation. Not clear. But I do think that these differences created not necessarily more divisions in the Civil War, but with the populace as well. Because it continuously, it could be a conspiracy of nobles against him, but you had to get the people in the military to join in, and that's what they did. Again, that Viva la République being heard in the streets. So I think that's probably more the main way those religious pluralities contributed to divisions in Haiti.
Just like a good segue off of that is just thinking of the politics of language. And I know there was this dramatic shift away from the usage of French and a push towards getting teachers who spoke English to come to Haiti. How do you reconcile like the necessity of translation to kind of spread Black Atlantic humanism, as you mentioned in your presentation, to the Americas and other areas who are still like under the institution of slavery while also wanting to retain a sense of personal culture through the usage of Creole, and like what gets lost when certain texts that aren't from the prominent leaders that like we see today or discuss today, what gets lost there when there isn't a translation from Creole, or when we don't make the effort to learn Creole to understand the original texts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if translation is so important in this era in general for any author, right? The famous Kenyan author Ngugi wa Thiong'o, he says Shakespeare couldn't have been Shakespeare without translation. Because how can you be world famous if people can't read you? And of course, he's wrote in Elizabethan English at a time when many people still wrote in Latin and vernaculars were on the rise, right? So in order to get to that position, you need translation. And so it's so interesting that in collaboration with a lot of those British merchants and abolitionists and commercial partners, that Christophe, him and his ministers understand the importance of translation. I should also mention that in that 1819 history of Vate, which is the first full history of Haiti written by a Haitian, essay on the causes of the revolutions and civil wars of Haiti, it appears, yes, in English in 1823, so posthumously after Vate's death. It also appeared in Dutch translation. And others of Vate's writings, excerpts, appeared in Italian, for example. So people were getting familiarity with him and reading him, and facilitated, of course, by these English translations. Vate, I've only found one instance where he used a Creole phrase in the Royal Gazette of Haiti, in which he was saying something that someone else said. And so instead of like translating it into French, he repeated it in Haitian Creole. But Juste Charlotte, in the opera that I showed you here and in some of his other writings, he gave dialogue to those characters because they're going to be performing, remember, on stage for court. He gave them dialogue in Haitian Creole and he gave them songs in Haitian Creole. And so it's very interesting because I think that it used to be the case that when people studied Haiti, they thought, or Haitian Revolution or even 19th century Haiti. Oh, I only need to know French. I don't need to know Creole. But the case of Juste Chanlat shows that there really would be a lot of Haitian patrimony and culture that would be inaccessible. You can sort of, maybe if you know French, work out some of the Creole, but some of it you really can't. Some of it you actually even need a dictionary from the 19th century to understand what the Creole words are, because they're not the same words that would be used for those things today, because languages evolve. So I think it is extremely important for those who want to study Haitian literature, thought, art, culture, history, to actually know Creole also, because the French that they're using is actually a Creolized French. And Baron de Vatte actually says that. He says, I hope my foreign readers will forgive me for the Haitian turn that I give to my phrases. And I've actually seen French speakers before kind of puzzle over a formulation that to me seems natural, because I see it a lot in 19th century Haitian thought, that we have to learn to conceive of it and think about it and study it on its own terms, rather than thinking about it as, oh, they wrote in French. They wrote in French, but, right? And then on the Republic side, in Le Télégraphe, which is the main newspaper of the Republic of Haiti, they would have Creole phrases in there. And in fact, before Boyer signed this disastrous indemnity, he was busy telling the Haitian people that they needed to shore up the military works and their defense systems. He was saying, we're going to fight if they ever come. And he used a Haitian Creole phrase in Le Télégraphe that's recorded a proverb. And so, again, there would be a lot that would kind of not come out. It's not the whole story, but it's part of the story that is interesting and necessary, that even in the Kingdom of Haiti, there is Creole, even though they don't conceive of, we could change the national language to Creole. They never get that far, but it's a huge part of the culture, because Chanlat is the most prominent he's the only one who writes operas. He's the most prominent songwriter, and these things are played at court. So yeah, I think you're right to stress that this would be lost to us, and more is lost to us because it wasn't recorded. An oral culture and other things that didn't make it into the historical record, much of which might have taken place in Creole or might have been a mixture of the two languages in the same way as Chanlat's works are. Well, thank you all very, very much. It's been a pleasure to teach you this semester. Don't be strangers, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to this week's Lectures in History podcast. To find even more history content, visit our website at cspan.org.